everybody, we got a fantastic show for you guys today. Making his second appearance on the show is Paul, who some of you may have remembered appeared on an earlier podcast episode talking about his incredibly powerful and terrifying events that happened after he built a log home in Michigan. If you haven't heard that episode, go back and listen to it. Paul is joining us again today to talk about the other events that both preceded that experience as well as things that happened following that in different homes throughout his life. Hey everybody, and welcome to the Paranormal Portal Podcast. I'm your host, Brent Thomas. Thank you all for joining us, and special thank you goes out to all of you who continue to support the podcast and continue to spread the word. Always remember, if any of you out there have experiences of your own that you'd like to share, feel free to email me at paranormalportalradio@gmail.com. Again, paranormalportalradio@gmail.com, and you too could be a guest on the show. Guess we'll get right into it. Welcome to the show, Paul. Great to have you back.
Hey, Brent. Great to be back on the portal. Love the show.
Hey, thanks, brother. You know, you've got the distinction of being probably one of the most I don't want to say haunted people, but you've had experiences throughout your whole life, and the profound level of these experiences is what I think really blows me away. What is it like to be a ghost magnet, first of all?
Well, it's pretty intense, I'll say that.
No doubt. No doubt. Now, full disclosure, ladies and gentlemen, Paul is actually my cousin, and I've grown up talking to him about these things, including the log events, which I really went through with him by proxy, because we talked every day throughout that period of intense activity. But you've truly had some incredible experiences throughout your life. So where do we begin with our journey here?
Probably I'll start with, at the beginning, I guess. The first home I lived in was a home from it was built probably 1880s.
Okay.
Old farmhouse, beautiful place. And my first experience there, I was probably between 7 and 8 years old. We were in the living room, my parents, my sisters, and I. And it was later in the evening. We were watching TV. Mm-hmm. We had several cats at the time, and a couple of them were in the living room with us. While we were watching TV, we had an old staircase, and it would creak when somebody walked up and down the stairs. And we were all in the living room, and we heard what sounded like somebody walking down the stairs. Now, we were all in the living room, and there was nobody else in the house at the time. Mm-hmm. So it was strange. We all kind of paused and looked towards the doorway where the sound was coming from. And one of our cats, stood up, looked towards the doorway, and started hissing.
Oh, geez.
Which got everybody's attention as well. And then basically a wispy kind of foggy apparition came through the doorway, past us, and then went into our kitchen. Mm. And everybody was pretty shocked. I mean, you could see it. It was plain as day. Yeah. And it looked, I mean, you couldn't really make out any features, mm-hmm. but I mean, it was human sized, and it moved across the floor, and we were all pretty shocked.
Wow. That's a hell of a baptism,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was my first experience. Didn't know what it was, but I knew that my parents were freaked out by it, so that freaked us out.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know how you cope with that. That's especially even for your parents, but I mean especially as a young child.
Yeah, it was interesting to say the least.
Wow. Now, you said that was the first experience. Do you, and I'm kind of spiderwebbing here, but do you know of, in after the fact, do you know that there was other activity that had happened that you just didn't know about, or is that just where it seemed to start? Just like, boom, there it is.
Yeah. So later on in life, my parents would talk about it. They talked about the house as being haunted. They didn't talk about it when we were little kids. Obviously, they didn't want to scare us, I assume. But later on, there was many things that happened in that house that were unexplainable.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So there's your first experience, and that's really an incredibly, incredibly rare experience. I know people have pursued ghosts their whole lives and may never, ever see any kind of apparition. And here you are, an 8-year-old kid, and you got one gliding through your living room. It's incredible. Mm-hmm. Wow. So where do we go from here?
Okay. So I was in the home it was our first home, my first home. So from birth until about 8 or 9 years old. Around that time, 8 or 9, the house burnt. Mm-hmm. And so obviously we moved from that location. But and I said the first experience, it was probably around 7 to 8 years old.
Okay.
So, but in those short years that I do recall, several things happened that were pretty scary. Mm-hmm. My next incident in the home. Again, it was, I was probably close to 8 years old, and in my bedroom, it was a large room. It had it was a bunk bed set up. However, it was more like a college loft bed. So the bed the bed that would be underneath was not attached to it. Okay. And it wasn't under there. It was across the room. Under the top of the bunk bed was a desk. Okay. Where I would do my homework and such. There was also a large old leather lazy boy style chair, mm-hmm. and then in front of that was I had a kind of it was almost like a hutch that I had a stereo system on, and I would sit in the chair at night and I would listen to music. I'd wear headphones and I'd listen to the record player, and I would rock in the chair. Uh-huh. It was something I like to do. One evening, my mom and my sisters were downstairs. They were watching TV. My father wasn't home, and I was rocking in the chair. Lights were off in the room. Had the door shut, and so it was real dark in the room. And I was just listening to the music and rocking, and out of nowhere, the back of the chair was ripped down, and it actually flipped the chair over. Ooh. And rolled me completely out of the chair and back underneath the bed. Oh man! It happened with such force that it rolled me all the way to the back underneath the bed. I ended up leaning against the wall, which was quite terrifying. Mm-hmm. And I immediately jumped up, ran out of the room, ran down the stairs, and jumped onto the couch with my mom and cuddled right up to her, and she was asking me, well, what's wrong, and I really didn't say anything. I just sat there and hugged her because I was scared. Yeah, I have no idea what had just happened. So yeah, that was a pretty scary situation there.
That is terrifying, and I mean that's it's one thing to see something drift through your living room, but it's another thing to have that physical interaction where it actually, forcefully jerked that chair back and made you roll out of it forcefully. I think that's quite a display of I don't know, power anyway,
No, I mean, it was a heavy duty chair. It was one of those big old lazy boys, leather lazy boys. And
wow.
It threw me out of there with some serious force. Whatever it was, it was not happy with me.
Maybe it hated that music or whatever.
I guess.
Wow. That's absolutely terrifying. But, then where do we go?
So the last incident that I had in the home before it burned down, again, was back in the room. You know, I had gone back in there after that, and I was sleeping, middle of the night, and I woke up from a sound sleep with basically the sensation of something hitting me, like a slapping me in the back.
Oh my God!
Like a hard slap right in the middle of my back. Mm-hmm. And again, I mean, you know, this terrified me. I leaped out of the top of the bunk bed towards the door, landed on the floor, and then I ran to my mom and dad's bedroom and jumped in bed with them. And you know, my dad immediately was like, well, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Something just hit me." And he's like, "You're dreaming. Nothing hit you." And I said, "Something just hit me in my back." And sure enough, he turned the light on it, and I had a red mark on my back.
Oh, man.
So something had hit me. There was a big red spot in my back, and they couldn't explain it. I couldn't explain it. All I know, it was terrifying.
Jeez.
And that was the last time I stayed in that room. I was at that point, I was done with the room. There was my mom and dad had they turned basically the attic. The attic was attached to their bedroom, mm-hmm. and it was a large attic room, and they had converted half of it into another bedroom, and my sister slept in that room. But in that room was another room that was about the size of a walk-in closet. Mm-hmm. In that room, they had put in a built-in bed and a closet, and that was all that could fit in that room. It was very small, and that became my room for the rest of the stay at that home, which was not much longer than that. Within a year, the house had burned, and we moved on.
But that is a testament to the fact that they must have not doubted what you were saying after seeing, you know, the red mark or handprint that was on your back. They must have been convinced something was happening to you in there in order to let you move into a closet, you know.
Yeah, well, more my mother, because my father, you know, even though he saw these things and there was things that happened in the house, he was less of a believer, shall we say?
Yeah.
The apparition coming through the living room, he tried to explain that away. You know, the slap in the back. You know, I don't remember what he said about it, but he didn't think it was actually somebody hitting me.
Oh, wow.
You know, but all I know is how it felt, and it woke me up out of a sound sleep, and you know, it definitely felt like somebody had slapped me in the middle of my back.
Oh, geez.
But you know, so even later on in life, you know, when they would talk about it, you know, my mom was a full believer, my dad not as much.
Sure, but I gotta tell you, of all three of those major incidents that you recall, that's the one that concerns me the most, because even with the chair, it wasn't really directly interacting with you directly. It was more indirectly, like, I'm going to flip the chair and he's going to come out of it. But hitting you was a direct attack. I mean, it seemed like there was an escalation happening there, you know, and I think that's the most concerning thing is like, why? What was going on that it decided you were the target? And how terrifying is that?
Yeah, and again, you know, I don't know what I did, but I was just a little kid.
Yeah, well, I guess that was maybe it didn't like kids. Who knows? But you know, it's a tragedy.
Maybe you know, staying in the room, it didn't want me in that room. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it could just be as simple as that. Like, this is my room. What are you doing here? Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to know. It's you know, all we can do is speculate. But it is interesting that it goes from there's an apparition gliding through a room to you're sitting in a chair. It flips you out of the chair, but then it goes right to attacking you directly. And that's, you know, there does seem to be a scary precedent being set there.
Sure.
Yeah.
Wow. I agree.
And it's a shame that, you know, that the home burned down. I know that was a tough time for you and the family, but, you ended up moving, and but that wasn't the end of your problems.
No. Many more experiences after that.
Okay, so take us on the ride. Where are we going?
Okay, so the house had burned. Now the house that we had lived in was it was on the main road, a fairly busy road, and my mom was an animal lover, and you know, we had dogs and cats, and several of them were hit on the road, and so. well, looking for the new property, my mom, she wanted to be secluded and off the road. So my dad had found a beautiful place. I mean, the house wasn't so great, but the property was beautiful. It was 88 acres on a semi-private lake. The driveway was a quarter of a mile long. It was a really beautiful piece of property. Mm-hmm. Now the home on the property was a kind of a strange situation. When I first saw the house, when we went over to look at it, I was like, "This is creepy," and it just looked creepy.
Did it?
It was a huge home, and it was a kind of a strange situation. There were 2 brothers and a sister that lived in the home, and they were in their 70s. Mm. So they had lived there all their whole life with their family, and they had basically divided the home up into 3 different houses. Oh. And they, and so they each had a section of this house, and they lived there, like I said. And I don't recall the reason why they, at that age, they decided to move out, but they did. Mm. And we bought the place, and like I said, I was concerned with how scary it looked. And my dad assured us all that, they were going to do some remodeling, and, which they did. And it was, it ended up being a beautiful house. It was, the whole house was built out of redwood, mm-hmm. and it was a gorgeous place. I think they added a large living room to it, and it ended up being 7,500 square feet when it was done. Very big house. Wow. Beautiful place.
Yeah.
But the house during the day was great. Mm-hmm. But at night, especially when you were in the home alone, mm-hmm. it was creepy.
It was.
It definitely had a creepy vibe to it at night.
Yeah, I can attest to that, because when I came out and visited, when I was young, everybody went out shopping, and I didn't want to go to the mall, but I was just kind of hanging out and watching TV, and that was fine. Like you say, when the sun was out, it was cool. It was beautiful. I mean, you had this beautiful lake in front of the house, and this beautiful lands all around you. But once the darkness came, it was like a shadow settled on that place, and it was a whole different place.
It was not a place you wanted to hang out, late at night alone. For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. But probably the first, and I lived in that home. I lived in that home from probably the age of 10 to 19. Mm-hmm. I lived there, and we would have lots of things happen in the house, little things, But the first real experience I had there, and I was probably 9. Oh no, I'm sorry, I was probably 10 or 11 when it happened. Mm-hmm. We had there was a very large basement, and it had many rooms in it, and there was at the bottom of the stairs, off to the right hand side, there was a kind of a little nook in there, and it had a workbench set up in it, and at the time I was really into model building. I would build, all kinds of models. Mm-hmm. And I had been down there painting the models. And while I was sitting there, I had reached for a jar that I had paint thinner in. And the jar moved away from my hand.
Oof.
Just a little bit, maybe slid about an inch away. Mm-hmm. And I stopped, and I was perplexed. I was like, "What's going on here? This is strange." Uh-huh. So I reached for it again, and it moved again.
Wow!
And at this point, I'm like, I was a little freaked out, but it was kind of cool. This thing was, I was reached for it; it would slide. Mm-hmm. So I reached for it again, and it moved again. So at this point, I reached for it very quickly. I was trying to snatch it up. Mm-hmm. And as I reached for it, and now this bench was probably 8 foot long.
Okay.
And I was sitting at the far end of it. And when I reached for it, it slid off the whole length of the bench, and then it slammed into, we had a chest freezer, and it slammed into the chest freezer and shattered.
Oh, man.
Now, at that point, it was, it seemed a bit aggressive, and I left the area immediately. I didn't even bother cleaning it up. I went right upstairs. Yeah. And I told my dad and my mom, and my dad, of course, he had he came up with some reason why it did that, and again, I don't recall what he said, but I was there, I saw what happened, and I knew what happened, and that, there was no way explaining it.
Right.
So and that was the end of my model painting down there. I never did it again. I never painted my models down there again. So
I can't blame you. That'd be enough to kill a hobby in a hurry.
Yeah, I was all done there. So again, and then the next thing that happened, and again, I don't remember, how long in between these things occurred.
Sure.
But the room that I was in, that my bedroom, had been, now the people who had lived in the house, their last name was Ferguson, and we had heard stories about Grandpa Ferguson. And he had died in the home.
Okay.
And again, so the room I was in was his bedroom. So one night I was sleeping, in the middle of the night, and I woke up, and there was, as soon as I opened my eyes, there was basically just ahead, a white face. It was pure white, and it was inches from my face.
Jeez.
And I remember, thinking, this must be a dream. This thing is right in my face, and I cannot move. I can't move at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking at this face. It's staring at me, and I can't move. And so, and I'm terrified.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking to myself, I'm hoping this is a dream. And I close my eyes and open them again, and it's gone. The face is gone. Mm-hmm. But I still can't move. It literally felt like weight vest. I had weighted vests all over me, just like a weighted blanket.
Oh.
And I just could not move. So I struggled, and I finally was able to slide out of my bed and stand up. And so immediately I went for the light switch in my room, and the light wouldn't come on.
Oh, no.
The light wouldn't come on. It would, and so then I went to my next, towards my doorway, there was another light switch for my room. So I went to that, and I tried to turn that on, and that light wouldn't come on.
Oh,
so
man.
At this point, I'm like, okay, I'm just getting out of here. So I leave my room, and then I walk down the hall to my mom and dad's room.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we had at the time we had 2 very large dogs. Well, one was a collie, wasn't big, but we had an Irish Wolfhound who was huge.
Yeah.
Casey, he was a big dog.
Yep.
And so I went into the room there. I went into my mom and dad's room, and the dogs were laying side by side on the floor, and I just curled up between them. I just laid on the floor, and I curled up between the dogs, and I just laid there. Then, of course, in the morning, my dad woke up, and he's like, "Hey, what are you doing in here?" And I said, "Well, I'm just sleeping." And he's like, "Why are you not in your room?" And I said, I didn't ever really go into it with my dad because, again, he just, didn't really believe that stuff. And I said, "Yeah, I had a really bad dream, so I came in here." And he's like, "Go back to your room." so I did. But again, that it just didn't, I was hoping it was a dream. It did not feel like a dream. I felt I was awake the whole time that it, and I, from the time I left my room till the time I got into, laid down with the dogs, it was real. It felt real.
Yeah.
And it didn't feel like a dream to me. So after that,
hold on a sec. I want to just ask you. So the white face was right in your face. You couldn't move. How long did the white face stay there?
I mean, it was, it's hard to say. I mean, I was terrified.
Sure. But
it seemed like an eternity. But I would say probably maybe a minute.
Oh, that long.
It was a long time, and I closed my eyes. I closed my eyes several times and kept opening them, and it was still there. Oh, and then the final time, I just closed my eyes, shut them really hard, and waited. Yeah. And then I opened them, and it was gone at that point. But again, that oppressive, weighted feeling was. I mean, it was so heavy, it was hard to breathe.
Oh man,
it was restricting my breath. And again, like I said, I mean, I've had plenty of dreams, and this did not feel like a dream. No. And like I said, but I get back in the morning, and the first thing I did was check those light switches, and they came right on.
Sure.
So, wow. But still, it was a regardless of what it was terrifying.
Yeah, well, I mean, it sounds like it was legitimate. Certainly electrical problems, they come up all the time with spirit activity. And I assume it's because presumably they're existing in a state of energy. And so either it inadvertently has an effect on electronics around them, or they actively can influence the electronics around them. But yeah, that certainly goes hand in hand.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yikes. Wow. Again, I can't imagine a worse feeling than coming out of a dead sleep to a white face inches from your own. I mean, that's just got to be the worst. Because, I mean, everybody has that person they know that's a close talker. They get right up to you and talk. And that's uncomfortable with a living person. But then if you open your eyes and it's a ghostly apparition, I just can't imagine.
Yeah, and the face, it didn't, it basically, I mean, it didn't, the mouth didn't move. It didn't make any, it didn't even blink. It was just staring basically into my eye.
Ah, that's so creepy. Wow. I don't think I ever would have slept in there again after that, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, and here's the thing about these things when they happen. I mean, I didn't really have a whole lot of choice.
Sure, yeah. I mean, being young, you're right. Yeah.
I would be, so like, the next several nights I was terrified to go into the room.
Yeah.
I was, for probably, for a good week straight, I was nervous.
Yeah.
But then, and these things that happened, they happened over, they didn't happen one right after another. It was over the whole, 9 to 10 years that I lived there.
Right.
So, they would fade away, and I would forget about them and, not think about them anymore. But, it was real uncomfortable for, like the very next night was horrible. I don't think I slept hardly at all that night.
Okay. So where are we going now?
So the next, significant incident occurred. And again, I don't remember, the time between these incidents. They just happened over the over the 10 or so years that I lived at the home. Mm-hmm. But, I had a big collection of, toy soldiers, and, I would make up these elaborate, games on the weekend, these battles, and have these toy soldiers all over my room. And, these recreations would go on all weekend long. And it was late at night. It was after midnight. I was in my room, and I had all this, big elaborate scene set up on my bed. And, I'm just playing with these toy soldiers, and right next to my left ear, plain as day, I heard a little girl giggle.
Oh, geez.
And it scared the heck out of me. I jumped up onto my bed, and I leaped towards the door of my bedroom out into the hallway. Mm-hmm. And I just turned around and looked back into my room. Oof. And just wondering, I mean, I was just bewildered on what had just happened. I mean, I knew I heard this little girl laugh, and it chilled me to the bone.
Yeah.
And as I was sitting there looking into the room, I had a clock radio, and it was the old style clock radios that the digits flipped. They were like a little plastic card, and they would flip.
Oh, right.
And it was a little clock radio, and the clock radio turned on, and then basically the dial started going back and forth.
The dial,
it was going back and forth, and not settling on a station, but just going through the stations quickly, back and forth.
Oh God!
And at that point, I was just like, yeah, screw this. So I went into my sister's bedroom and woke her up, and I said, "You got to see this." And she came out into the hall with me and looked into my bedroom. We didn't walk into the room, but I said, the clock radio is playing, and I didn't turn it on. But when we got back there, it was no longer on. Oh, wow. And my sister, she totally believed me. I mean, she didn't question me. But I was like, you mind if I stay in your room? And she said, yeah. So we went back into her room, and she threw one of her pillows on the floor next to the bed, and then gave me a blanket. And I stayed there the rest of the night.
Oh my God!
Now it was difficult for the next few nights for me to even go in my room. I didn't even want to go in there, but I didn't have a whole lot of other options, places to stay in the house. So eventually I went back in the room, and and then nothing happened for a while after that.
Take us on the next level here.
Okay, and again, there was lots of little things that happened in between.
Sure.
These are the things that really stick out, that really scared me. Yeah. There were other things that that weren't as scary. They just little things that happened here and there. Things would move a little bit, or things would be out of place, or things that something would fall. Just things like that.
Sure.
But nothing too big. But the next, I was much older for this one. This was an interesting thing as well. In my room, I had a little rocking chair in there, kind of a little cloth lazy boy style chair. Mm-hmm. And again, I would I'd sit in my room and I would rock in the chair and listen to music. That was one of my favorite things to do.
Right.
But behind the chair was the only access to our attic. So there was a door there, and it went up into it went to the stairwell up to the attic. And the attic was super creepy. Never went up there. We didn't store things up there. We didn't have anything up there. Mm-hmm. It was just kind of a creepy area, and we never went there. And I had a little latch on the door, basically to lock the door.
Right.
And so one night now, and this seemed like a dream. Okay. And I started out in the dream. I woke up in the middle of the night, woke up, and the door to the attic was open. It was, the rocking chair had been slid forward and the door was wide open. Now I never keep that door open.
Right.
And again, like it felt like a dream to me.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sitting there and I'm looking into the opening of the doorway, and it's pitch black. Can't see anything. And my brother, he had little juggling balls, these little, I think they're red, yellow, and blue balls that he was trying to learn how to juggle. Mm-hmm. And but I mean, he didn't live with us, and he wasn't there.
Okay.
But he had these balls that he was always juggling, and so again, it felt like a dream. And there's this little red ball, and it came out of the closet, bounced out of the closet to me. They rolled to me. I'm sitting in my bed, and so so I got down, I picked it up, and I threw it back into the closet, and it rolled back out again. And I thought, wow, that's crazy. And then I picked it up, I threw it back in, and this went on for a while. And then I finally, however dreams go, it ended, and I woke up in the morning. But here's the strange thing. When I woke up in the morning, the door to the attic was open, and my chair was slid forward, and that little red ball was on the floor.
Oh, good.
Yeah, Lord. It was there.
So there's the big question. Was it a dream?
Yeah.
Well, clearly it wasn't. I mean, it may have been your experience as a dream, but it seems like there was an intelligence behind it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And my brother was missing his red ball. He came over and I gave it to him, and he was like, "How did this get here?" That was odd.
That is really odd. Wow. I mean, that's a whole different level,
Yeah. And again, that, I didn't leave that door open ever. That was a creepy place. I didn't like it. I didn't go in there. I didn't go up there. And that, there was no, in that morning when I woke up, I immediately shut that door and locked it. Because, and so, I mean, that was a weird experience.
That is a really creepy experience, man. That's, like I said, this is stuff right out of a movie, That's incredible. Wow. Huh. That just really blows my mind. Even though I've heard it before, it's just, when you think of the ramifications of events like that, it's like, that's a very powerful event. I mean, it's a big event. If a cereal bowl slides, 2 inches on your table, that's a huge event. But this is like way bigger, because you're talking about somehow a ball appearing that shouldn't even be there. And then you're playing catch with something in the deep shadow of a closet you never open. And then you wake up and the door is open, the chair is slid out, and the ball's laying there. Oh, wow. Yeah,
and again, I mean, it did feel like a dream at the time. I mean, I thought it was a dream. In the dream, I thought this was a dream. Yeah. But when I woke up and the door was open and the ball was there, I was just, I had no explanation for it. It was a strange situation.
Yeah.
And again, I was older at this time. I was in my later teens. Wow. I think I was in high school at the time. So, jeez. I wasn't a little kid anymore, so I didn't, I thought it was strange, but that, it didn't really scare me.
Sure.
I wasn't really, I just thought that was really weird, and something was going on there, but I don't, and of course I told my sisters, I told my mom about it, and, I didn't bother telling my dad about it. but it was just another strange, thing that happened.
Yeah.
That I had no explanation for.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know how you could explain that one. There's just so many levels of weird in that one, but they all are. Yeah. I mean, that's the amazing part of it. It's like, these several events that we've gone over so far. I mean, these are not small events. These are huge, events that have happened and you've been participant to. So it's really pretty just extraordinary, but in a terrifying or at least concerning way, because it's one thing to have things happen that shouldn't happen, but again, this is like a whole nother level of things that shouldn't happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. So what happened next?
So it comes out now we sold the home I was probably I was 19.
Okay.
I just graduated and I was heading off to college, and so we had sold the home and we were moving out. And so we had a lot of us had friends there that were helping. We had a lot of people there helping us move. And this actually didn't happen to me, but it was the last of the paranormal experiences that we had at the house. So one of our friends, my brother had several of his friends over helping, and so basically what happened was, we're all loading trucks up and getting everything out of the house. And one of the guys, Steve, he was, helping us, and he's a big guy. He was a big, strong guy, so it was good to have him there. And all of a sudden, we were loading up the truck. He came from the back of our house, got in his vehicle, and left. Didn't say a word to us. Didn't say goodbye. Didn't say anything, and just left. Mm-hmm. And we were actually, we were planning on having a party for everybody at the end of, at the end of the day, have pizza and stuff, and we we're gonna have a little party, and he just left. And these are the days before cell phones.
Sure.
So my brother tried to call him, and he didn't answer the phone, and so we just kind of shrugged it off. He just left. Well, it turns out later that he was back behind the house, grabbing some stuff, and now this is in the middle of the afternoon. This is about 2:00 in the afternoon. He saw an apparition walk from our garage, which was detached, mm-hmm. basically into the side of the house. Oh. And he said that it was plain as a day. It was he could see features, he could see arms and legs, he could see everything. And he said, but it was just basically see through. It was transparent. And it walked from the garage right into the side of the house. and he thought at that time it was probably best to get out of there. So that was the last incident there.
No, that's crazy. Wow. Yeah, he was just come over to help and lend a hand, and he got a little bit of terror on the side for nothing. Wow.
Yeah.
So there was also a story that you and I had discussed, and I thought this was interesting because, of course, this comes up a lot in the paranormal, but it has to do with haunted dolls.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Would you mind going into that a little bit?
Yeah. Jezebel. Jezebel was okay. So Jezebel was a doll, an old doll, probably from the I would say it's probably maybe from the 20s or 30s. Uh-huh. My mom had picked it up in a antique store for one of my sisters, and there was a couple of incidences that happened with that doll while we were living in the house. Again, these didn't happen to me; these happened to my sisters. Mm-hmm. But one of them, my sister used to keep the doll. She had a love seat in her room, and she kept the doll on the. She had a bunch of stuffed animals on the couch, and she kept the doll on the couch. And she told us that one day she was on her bed. I think she was reading, and she looked over at the doll, and her eyes were opening and closing. Now, when you laid the doll down, her eyes would close, and when you sat her up, the eyes would open. Oh. And and she said basically she sat there, and the doll's eyes were just going up and down, opening and closing, opening and closing. And she said it happened for several minutes, and then it just stopped. Wow. And she basically went back to doing what she was doing. Finished her reading. That was one incident with the doll. And then my other sister, she had an incident with the doll. She had been playing with the doll for a while. She had it in her room, and my sister was quite a little artist. She loved drawing, and she was really good at it.
Yeah, she was.
And so she said that she was on the bed. It was late. It was about 11 o'clock at night, and she was drawing pictures of horses, laying on her bed. Mm-hmm. And the doll was basically sitting next to her in the bed. And she said that she was in the middle of drawing, and she said the doll's head turned, and it said, "I'm tired. Let's go to bed." And she basically laid the doll down, turned the lights off, and went to bed.
Oh my God! I would have. Yeah. I'm not sure I would have shared the bed at that point.
Yeah.
But,
now this doll, it didn't talk. It was, this was not a talking doll. This was an old antique doll.
Wow.
And again, all it did was close its eyes when you laid it down. So, and my sisters would always say, they would always talk back and forth about being very nice to Jezebel, the doll.
Oh,
they were very nice to her. And,
that's
so
creepy.
I often wonder if whatever was, inside of that doll was what giggled in my ear that night.
Oh yeah, that's a great point.
I always thought that. And I mean, the when that doll or when that disembodied voice giggled in my ear, just like a little girl,
mm-hmm.
I immediately thought that it I wondered if it was Jezebel.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Here's an interesting fact about dolls, and it's things that I've talked about on the show before, but I've researched this quite a bit, and there's actually nobody's quite sure. I mean, there's ideas of where the first dolls came from, but generally speaking, dolls were never invented as a child's plaything. They were allegedly, according to some sources, were invented to be vessels for spirits.
Really?
Yeah. And so it's interesting because you got to wonder, well, I mean, how many haunted dolls are there out there? And allegedly there's a bunch, but why? Well, maybe if there is an earthbound spirit, that's, it's a natural attraction for them to inhabit something that looks like a body. And I find that really interesting. It's also allegedly one of the reasons that the Amish don't allow faces on their dolls. Their dolls cannot have eyes, nose, or mouth at all. And it is because they believe if it has an eyes, nose, and mouth, then it will be attractive to an evil spirit that will move into it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I had heard that, obviously over the years that spirits were drawn to dolls, but I did not know that dolls were created for them. Yeah,
allegedly.
I've never heard that.
And I haven't been able to absolutely authenticate it, but I found a few sources that imply that that's the case. So, if anybody out there listening has more information, I'd love to hear about it. But yeah, I find that really fascinating, and it seems to, I guess, stand to reason. If they were going to get stuck somewhere, it'd be probably more attractive to be in something familiar, rather than, a toothbrush or something. So,
yeah. Well, I will add too that my sister still has Jezebel, and she still treats her very well.
Smart. Yeah. I mean, you just don't know. I mean, it could be a benign kind of thing, but God, it could also be horrible. You never know. So
sure. Absolutely.
That's the scary version. Well, I appreciate you coming on and sharing it with our listeners. And thank you so much, brother, for coming back for a part 2. This has been wonderful.
Sure. My pleasure.
All right, everybody. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. Get out. Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening. And we hope you'll tune in for part 2 later this week. Keep watching for it. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining us here on tonight's show. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please feel free to follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/Paranormal Portal Radio, as well as finding us on Twitter. We're on Twitter at Paranormal Portal, Portl, and we'd love to have you stop by our YouTube page and subscribe and check out our shows there. We got hundreds of shows, Journeys into the Paranormal Portal, so I hope you'll check it out, guys. We're over there at youtube.com/Paranormal Portal, so hope to see you guys soon. We'll be back, of course, for more podcasts in the coming days. So we love you all. Be good, be kind, be nice. Take care of each other. Help each other out. Find the magic in every day. And remember to laugh as much as you can.